In my opinion, the 22 Magnum is a much better choice than the 22 long rifle. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we briefly covered the history of the 22 Magnum cartridge. In a couple of prior videos, we had talked about the 22 long rifle and how potentially it might fit in or not fit in to an everyday carry platform. I really enjoyed reading the comments and varying opinions on the matter when I made that video. So out of that, I decided to talk about where, if at all, the 22 Magnum cartridge would fit in to your everyday carry platform. When I originally shot the long rifle video, it was pointed out to me by one of our viewers, Alan W., that the reason he uses a 22 long rifle is because he has arthritic hands and he lacks the strength and dexterity to perhaps use a more powerful handgun. I must apologize to our viewers because I didn't consider that when I made the video. That is a very valid point. And if you can't control the handgun, it is essentially useless or perhaps dangerous to an innocent bystander. Out of that, my mind wandered to 22 Magnum. I think that the 22 Magnum has at least triple the power of the long rifle. And right now what I'd like to do is reference everybody to another channel, an excellent video. It's about 22 or maybe 25 minutes long, and it was done perhaps around 2014 by the Military Arms channel. They compared side by side the 22 Magnum cartridge with the 5.7 from FN. I think you're going to find, if you watch that video in its entirety, how well the 22 Magnum cartridge actually did against the 5.7. Now, having said all of that, the 22 Magnum absolutely has enough power to neutralize a dangerous threat. The issue with it is, in my mind, does it have the reliability to neutralize a dangerous threat? And what are some of the trade-offs that you're going to encounter? That bullet is extremely fast, and the way it's shaped, it has a tremendous amount of penetration. Later on in the video, we're going to use our normal setup and we're going to go out and shoot at the FBI ballistic standard with the gelatin and do our normal testing for a bullet stopping power. I know, because I watched plenty of material on the matter, that the 22 Magnum is way powerful enough to neutralize the threat. So let's talk about some of the downsides with the weapon systems. The first one in my mind is, if you've never shot one before, you're going to notice right away that it has a tremendous amount of gas and light escaping from the end of the barrel. I told you in the other video that you could light a cigar with the flame coming out of the end of the barrel. Now, why that's important tactically is this: a lot of civilian-based shootings happen in low-lit areas, and your night vision is going to be severely compromised using a gun like this. And I'm telling you right now, it is very, very unusual how much energy is actually coming out of the end of the barrel in the form of light. So that's a concern, perhaps not a huge one, but it's definitely something to consider. The other main issue we have to get by is how reliable is it, and importantly, how reliable are the guns that shoot it. For instance, this is a real popular semi-automatic pistol made by KelTec PMR30. It has actually 30 rounds of capacity in the magazine, which, wow, that's fantastic, right? Try to get this guy out. And you can see, big boxy magazine. If you start totaling up the foot-pounds of energy, maybe 300, 330 in every round, that's impressive. The issue I have with this particular weapon is, once you pick it up, I think you would be hard-pressed to trust your life to this guy. He just comes off as a very whimsical little thing, perhaps something to have fun with on the range, but it doesn't reek of durability. In fact, when I used to be in sales, I heard a lot of complaints about this particular gun. And I'm not bashing KelTec. I think they're a very innovative company with one heck of an R&D department. But I noticed a lot of these, the slide latch would break off without a lot of use. It's just not, in my opinion, something that's going to hold up to a ton of everyday use. Now, another option out there for you is the Rock Island XT, all steel gun. I have less experience with that. It is a heavy gun, and you don't get near the magazine capacity of the KelTec. But Back to the nature of a rimfire cartridge. The way they put the compound into the case and spin it doesn't lend itself to being as reliable as a centerfire cartridge. It just isn't. Many is time that I've been on the range shooting a rimfire cartridge, and it's not the firing pin's fault. It looks like it makes a heavy enough crimp in the rim. It just doesn't go off. Sometimes I've even experimented with giving it a little twist, putting it in a different spot. Sometimes it goes off and sometimes it doesn't. Those are not problems I like to solve in the middle of an emergency situation. So back to reliability. One of the other issues covered was put it in a revolver. Yes, they are going to be more reliable out of a revolver. Issue being your limited shot capacity. It is true that most civilian shootings don't use a whole lot of ammo. Nobody ever gets into a Miami Vice style gunfight. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Some studies say 3 rounds, 4, 5, whatever. This particular one happens to hold 6. Would be reliable. I don't necessarily believe that Ruger intended this necessarily for concealed carry. It was just one of the revolvers I could get my hands on. So if you Google 22 Magnum revolvers for everyday carry, I think you're going to find a couple of solid choices. Bear in mind, I would prefer to have a longer barrel than some snub nose, but the 22 Magnum would be better snub nose than say 38 or 357 because of its already limited recoil over the other 2 calibers. Not a bad choice for certain. I would just prefer people begin with perhaps 380 or 9mm for their everyday carry choices. There are many holsters available for these, and in fact, you can actually get the 22 Magnum in Derringer form. Lots of people make them. I wouldn't say lots, but there's a few companies out there making them. And so for people that like ultra concealment or perhaps a pocket gun, certainly an option for you. I've never had the pleasure of shooting one of the Bond Arms 357 Magnums, and hopefully that's a pleasure I can avoid because I don't imagine that's a whole lot of fun. In Derringer form, I think the 22 Magnum would be extremely effective and controllable. Back to the issue of arthritic hands, or perhaps hands that lack strength and dexterity to control a powerful gun. In my experience, the 22 Magnum is very controllable based on its recoil impulse. But you also have to keep in mind some of that is based on the platform that you choose. If you choose an all-steel 22 Magnum revolver, it's obviously going to have less recoil than this sort of polymer over-shrouded steel sort of thing. This is light, very, very good to carry, but will certainly have more recoil than its steel cousin. Related to the 22 long rifle, it is slightly more recoil driven, but one of the other things I think we have to consider is back to the blast and the sort of the effect going on at the muzzle. It does shoot a lot of gas, and if you're sort of already recoil sensitive, you're not going to like that. However, if you can shoot a 22 long rifle, in my opinion, you can certainly shoot a 22 Magnum very, very easily. Hear me clear, rimfire will never be as reliable as a center fire cartridge. But having said all of that, if you are one of those people that have strength and dexterity issues in your hands, in my opinion, the 22 Magnum is a much better choice than the 22 long rifle, which is also a view held by some of our people that made comments on the previous video. I wholeheartedly agreed with them. One person even said that 22 LR is better than a stick. For sure it is. But if that's better than a stick, then I'm here to tell you the 22 Magnum is better than a sharpened stick, because this guy is way, way more powerful, and I think absolutely the minimum cartridge that you should consider carrying, but I still don't recommend. So at the end of the day, here's my thoughts. 22 Magnum, powerful bullet, designed to kill varmints at 100 yards. Is it reliable enough for an everyday carry platform? Not for me. I would highly recommend people stick with center fire cartridges, 380 at a minimum, and 9mm with some proper training.